Hello everyone, this is Nandini, and as you all know that we are in the middle of a lockdown. This is a global lockdown, so it's not us, and we are in the middle of a crisis, and we are all almost kind of stuck in our homes. So I thought that it might be actually interesting to just begin by talking about home, reading about home, and also given that we are being told right now that home is the safe space. So what happens if as a writer I'm actually writing against that and have written against that? So I would begin from a poem from my first full-length collection, Historians of the Redundant Moments. And it's a poem called The Walls of This Home. It comes pretty early in the collection. So yeah, here it is. And also this is my first time of doing this. So hope you would keep that in mind. So if there is any problem, please let me know. And also I would try my best. The walls of this home. A faint attempt to trace my fingers along these walls. Too many pasts to unembrace, too many catastrophes breathing through each other's mouths, trying to erase the inevitable prequels and sequels. Yes, we have left behind our child brides hanging from the barbs on the wires. In this house, devoid of nooks and corridors, cellars and parlors, we live without ghosts, save those we have orchestrated from the detritus of demolished museums, unfurled flags, abandoned notebooks, and misguidances. This game of hide and seek we play is nothing but our children's way of gauging, mapping, discovering the uncharted corners that are not nooks, not corridors, not cellars, not living rooms. An impeccably drafted map of mold droppings, crumpled paper boats in the farthest corners, pencil stubs inside drawers, a pocket-sized diary under the stainless steel almirah, pages torn, save for one. In it, in littlest Anne's round hands, for you always, Amitesh. These chronicles tossed out, discarded. Beheaded remnants of a home. Our secret reservoir of stories unnarrated. A tap on the wall, the sound of my sister's head bumping the bedpost. A home is where the clutter is. A home is where the clutter is. A home is where the clutter is. A home is where possibilities come to petrify under humdrum havoc. A home is where possibilities come to petrify under humdrum havoc, and erased at last this burden of 101 lifetimes. The walls of this home must become nothing but repetitive continents. Thank you. And after I wrote this particular book and another one called Occupying the Tongue, and both of these were concerned with homes and specifically what we might consider concerns of domestic and the domesticity. So I kind of became the domesticity poet, right? And it's not a good stereotype to have, especially as a woman writing. So my next two manuscripts, which I'm kind of slowly working on, are kind of taking the persona out of the home space, and I would begin to read from those manuscripts. So one of them is called The Heirloom Vanguard, and the other one tentatively is called The Complacent Cartography. And a lot of these poems actually are city poems. And I thought that given this moment we are inside the kind of our interiors, our domestic space, this might also be the moment, and we are kind of wanting to go out. So this might be the moment to think about what the city means, what the openness, what actually does the outdoor mean for all of us. So I would begin with a poem called The Prayer. Smash open this city's bones with your own two hands, depleted as the autumn night polish. Smash open its stopped clocks, secret alleyways, cul-de-sacs. Smash open its unfailing memories. Smash open its overabundance of wagging tongues. Read them apart, tear them apart. Smash open all the foretellings, retellings, and untellings that the city can boast. Smash open its red cement floors, rain-glittering cobblestones, the indoor plants on the high-rise parlors. Smash open its bronze martyrs on horseback, its courthouses, police stations. Smash open its movie theaters, serpentine lines blocking traffic, the gargling, coughing trucks. Smash open its eucalyptus ribs, its putrescent dog carcass, the Britannia jingle at dawn. Smash open its tombstones, its abandoned graveyards, the hollowness of its cicada shells. Smash them open, spit them out. Smash them open, spit them out, then rhyme them back again. The next one is called the Awake. The morning siren loves to break all pronouns into chipped earthen cups. A limestone chapel in the middle of coconut trees, the church bells ringing as if they are untuned symbols of an evening Sankirtan. This city is an exercise in incongruence, a photocopy of what came before elsewhere. What escapes this photocopy is the image of a dead eucalyptus, dead from the very moment of its inception, yet offering its bare branches for the migrant birds to fall asleep. What cannot be woven in the leftovers of this island yarn is the ballad of a seagull who decides to scatter its feather across the breadth of an abandoned lighthouse. An abandoned lighthouse, boatman caught mid-ocean in a storm, and the knowledge that this cup of tea that flows from lip to lip bears no signature. The city loves to pound all rhymes into porcelain dust, abrasive. What do you miss when you touch the smolders only through the incessant ticking of clock hands? A cricket on the armrest of the porch chair, the delicate warmth of the coffee mug in between my palms, the well-manicured backyards of a neighborhood where the only sound is that of twittering doves, chirping sparrows. We are strangers here. Last night's winds overthrew the flower pot on the open porch. You picked it up only to let it slip through your fingers. A vain effort to wake a hamlet from its object meats. A vain effort to wake a hamlet from its object meats. In between the wrinkles of your neck is a robin egg emporium that refuses to spill over even at the din of its own breaking bones. What do you forget when you touch these ashes only through the incessant whirling of car wheels? And this one was called La Otra Pregunta. And as we are kind of locked inside, and as we are also thinking about the boredom that comes with being inside, not being able to go out, I would just also like to take a minute to say that the corona in so many ways kind of, it's surreal, right? It brings out the worst fear in us. It also, for us as Indians, as people from the subcontinent, it also possibly brings us a lot of things that we have fought for so long. The purity, the untouchability, the sanitization. And I mean, I would be honest that at this moment, I actually feel alienated from my own body. And also, which makes me think that as a woman, when I actually go out into the city, what is my relationship to that outside space? And even as I gave myself the task to write about the city, after my first book, I could not actually write the city poem that I have loved reading, the city poem of so many of the male writers, beginning from Lorca to so many of the Indian poets. So a lot of the poems that I'm reading now are kind of response to those kinds of city poems and what the city means for me. So it's really a kind of the city inside my head rather than any historical city. So let me read this poem called The Leftover History. A refusal is what we are looking for. A refusal is what we are looking for, an unwillingness that will overwhelm, an abnegation that will break this ceramic elf in two without the interference of my fingers. A refutation as epic as the ash on the tip of an incense stick, a smoldering blister in between your toenails where the skin touches the sandal strap. What the loudest of the rally chants could not unravel was the tune-heavy olive wood fiddle pledged to your shoulder bones, a concealment of the riddle you were lugging along in your marrow, the feathers of an electrocuted pigeon. An unbridled eyelash, a dictum to trace in thin pencil lines, one thing at a time, a meadow, a rice barn, an owl flapping clean the remains of a coal train from its feathers. Your advice was to settle for a more pragmatic metaphor, an Osine room built by clasping one palm into another together. What had to be exercised was a tongue twister. How Thumbelina is a product of the long course of the princess development. How Thumbelina is a product of the long course of the princess development. A thud, a bang, a banyan tree, thumping its roots on the brick cracks of a sidewalk. And that's the sound of our demolishing memoir. This one is called Intimate Ossuaries. The evening storm rides the city's young men. The brown limp of winter in every crack of the city's cobblestones teaches them how to etch the silhouette of the birds in flight, the feathers glued together to form the wings, the open beak, cartilages, a thin film of dust on every leaf. The city began as a roundabout history of forms set in motion in a different neighborhood. A city manufactured inside the redundant alphabets, fragile dust, brittle pages. A skinny girl, ball-cropped hair, quill-thin arms making a return, trying to forge this city's ribcage from its insistent coughs. She is gathering between her palm lines what this city harvests. Used book shacks, coffee houses, lonely neighborhood parks, tram lines, tobacco-stained lips. No one taught her how to write herself as the chronicler of an unborn night. How to document this collapse of the present within her veins. The city rarely teaches its young women to etch the bones of unchronicled poets. Rarely teaches them to hammer in a storm on the mirror. No one will buy this portrait of a city's detritus. No museum will light her way home. She burns her collectibles inside the marrow of her bones, illustrates them with tomato crimson petals. When she will prance around the terrace at dawn, the storm will be raging elsewhere. And as we kind of go towards the end of my time, I'm almost up. I would kind of like to talk a little bit about and just point out that even as we are talking about the boredom of being indoors, there is a huge crisis outside. As we all know that there is a huge crisis with the migrant laborers. We know the police violence, the public humiliation that would also be the part of the history of the COVID-19 and 5, 10, 20, 25 years from now. And we also know that to the extent that people like me or us can get the chance, do get the chance or want to interact with people who actually work in our homes as maids, as delivery guys, their primary concern is not the virus, but the fact that They might actually die from starvation. So I would kind of like to end with a couple of poems on that note. So this poem is called The Secret History of Versification. An owl with a broken beak, a bone-worn silence. It would have been a mistake to know the names of the turbulence here. The certitude with which a soldier fires towards a crowd, the inevitability with which a glass bird of an unidentifiable species is installed in the middle of the city square, the raindrops spilling from its wingspan, illuminating the darkest corners of an yet unborn child's oral cavity. These are not instances of temporary acquittal. A dawn flavored with burnt coal smell of the roadside clay oven, the tea leaves brewing in milk, the tang of an almost kitchen. A famine always smells like a memory. The recollection of the fragrance of a pot of boiling rice, white as autumn clouds. How the odor of a body stuck in a chair can flatten a meter's edge. How the irrelevance of a poem can reek. 1,000 fragments and more, and we both know there is nothing that will shackle my index finger to yours. A broken genealogy between us, sin the blood map, sin marriages. A rickshaw puller crushed to pulp by a squeaky new car, and the young woman driving the car does not look away. In between her thumb and forefinger, gliding out of the car window, a leather leash, waiting the presence of a puppy. In another instance, she will write, in rhymes, the private history of drapery as touch, knowing her father's hands had tied a shawl weaver in front of a military jeep. Knowing her father's hands had tied a shawl weaver in front of a military jeep, an armor against laudable disaffection. In yet another instance, from the fortified walls of the university in the edges of the city, she squeaked, in cadence, the biography of a swooping arrow, knowing full well her brother has ordered the rape of an entire village. This too, we know, this is how innocence too can be bought. And my last one, it's called Allegory Reassembled. To suffer from the superfluity of those who came late, no last notes from comrades who left, no immaculately plotted atlas for comrades yet to come. Nothing I write, say, sculpt or mold would be seriously annihilating, disassembling, or an original treatise on how to carve a sky out of unsaid yearnings. What I can promise is to impart this detritus, a body that resembles a tree bark, without confessions, without despair, without metaphor, without atonement. An effort to chronicle these blood clots without invoking the shadows of the bestsellers lists. Yet there is nothing novel or illuminating about this state of plight called allegory. Despair, after all, is a luxury only poets can afford. What I'm left with then is a stubbornness to excavate, a resolution that even in this epoch of the loss of a shared dictionary to decide directions, I will write in long lines that stretch across the page. Thank you, everyone. And this is kind of the last poem of mine. And thanks to Ashwini, thanks to Mansi for making this possible. And we have a great line of poets to keep you engaged, to keep you thinking about rhymes, about what we can do with rhymes and what we cannot. So goodbye and thanks.